about now? Can you guys hear us? Yes? Are we good? Yes. There's always something. The technical stuff, it's just this never-ending thing. All right, thank you guys. We don't have to start over. That makes me really happy. So I guess I'll introduce you again. This is my friend, my longtime friend, and the brilliant doctor, Rob Huizenga. And he was a huge hit on my channel when I brought him on a few weeks ago to answer some questions about sex and relationships and STDs. He is, I never know how to introduce you. It's so funny.
I'll make up something. Make it good,
let's see. He's a Harvard Medical School graduate, right? He's the author of the amazing book, Sex, Lies, and STDs, the must-read before you swipe right. You can check out the copy in the description on Amazon.
And by the way, can I stop you right now? You only need to read this if you're having sex or you know somebody who's having sex. Other than that, no need to bother with it.
Yes. So it's funny. After our last live stream, my mom called me the next day and said, your intro for Rob didn't do him any justice because he's done all kinds of things and I never know how to quite. So do you want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit while we're waiting for people to join?
Well, I've done a few things. We did a few TV shows over the years. Extreme Makeover, American Gladiators, Biggest Loser. Just did an ultimate challenge show where we went to the top of one of the mountains in Peru and did that for YouTube Red. So a little TV. I've got a practice in Los Angeles, and of course was the doctor for the Raiders, which was kind of a fun interlude, and wrote a book about that, which was fun. But this is something that I've become very passionate about now.
Yeah, absolutely. And more importantly than all, well, I don't know if it's more importantly than all that. He's a very important friend in my life. He's the reason I can even walk again. He's the person where all the other doctors, when I was having all kinds of knee and leg issues, he took one look at my MRI and knew the exact surgery I needed. So if it weren't for him, I would literally, I don't even know what
I think you got to thank the Raiders for that.
I know, right?
Orthopedic experience there. So you owe it to the Raiders.
I don't even know what I'd be doing.
Ability to walk.
Exactly. So yes. So I don't even know where to start. The title of this live stream is The Dark Secret That the Bachelor TV Show Doesn't Want You to Know. So after our last live stream, everyone wanted to bring him back on for a part 2 for live Q&A about sex and STDs and how to talk to your partner about these kinds of things. So we can definitely answer any questions you guys have about that. But we wanted to kind of kick this one off with this secret about...
It is a dark secret.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have any idea what they would be doing that in this vein with, the sexual liberties that we enjoy this century, what in the world they could be doing? I mean, this is a show that should be progressive, right? I mean, it's ABC. They should be leading the way for relationships, right?
You would think so. So let's just, as we're waiting for people to join, and of course you guys type in any questions you have for us. What is this dark secret? Let's just start with that.
The dark secret is this. Anyone that comes on as a contestant on The Bachelor, if they have genital herpes, instantly dismissed. Go see a doctor. This is my question. Number one, we know a huge percentage of Americans have genital herpes too. When people say herpes, they usually are referring to genital herpes type 2, herpes simplex type 2. And the issue is there's a lot of people with that. 1 out of 10 men in the Bachelor age range, let's say that's from 20 to 40, have genital herpes type 2. And twice as many women as men, which is another topic I'd like to talk about, have herpes because of anatomical differences. They have a lot more mucous membrane exposure during intercourse, and therefore they're much more susceptible to herpes. Now, you have 1 out of 5 women that have genital herpes too, and you have 1 out of 10. So you're just dismissing those people. Well, would you expect that, or do you think that's fair?
We talked about this beforehand, and I said, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. If I were to be on the show, something I would never do in a million years, but just, just my natural reaction was, well, I wouldn't necessarily want to be at risk for something like that if there was like a knowledge beforehand. And so we would love to talk about that with you guys and love to hear what you guys think about that. So
my position is very, very clear. Herpes is no big deal. Absolutely not a big deal. In addition, as of today, this wasn't true back in my era. I'm a little bit older than Lana. It was not true then that herpes type 1 is equally causative of genital herpes as herpes type 2. And herpes 1 is cold sores, right? The good herpes. Well, in some university studies now, in individuals around 20 years old, up to 80 or 90% of new onset genital herpes is type 1. So this whole thing about good herpes, cold sores, bad herpes, genital herpes type 2, it doesn't match anymore because both the types of herpes present generally very similarly. You can't visually tell the difference, and they tend to be equally prevalent now. So this whole thing about, oh, the Bachelor is going to kick out people with the old bad, and they're going to leave all the people, up to 50% of individuals aged 20 to 40 have type 1. So they're going to let all those people stay with a clear chance of getting genital herpes, and they're going to kick off the type 2. I call that clear discrimination.
I see this is something I don't know very much about. So this is part of why you wrote the book, right? Can we talk a little bit about what inspired you to write this book?
Well, the book was basically inspired by a lot of things. Number one, Charlie Sheen was faced with this incredible decision to go public with HIV, and he took a huge amount of criticism in the newspaper, in the media, and I was there as his doctor, and I wanted to correct the misconceptions. The misconceptions there was, if you have HIV and you're fully treated, there's essentially a 0% chance you're going to pass that to your partner. So he was open that he had had sexual intercourse with several of his girlfriends without any condoms. And that started an internet firestorm. Mm-hmm. But the facts are, and that's why I wrote the book initially, that if you have HIV and you're fully treated, your chance of passing is very low. In fact, if God forbid, you decided to have a one-night stand at the hottest nightclub in your community, you'd have a much higher chance. Why? Because there's hundreds of thousands of individuals in America with HIV that aren't fully treated, and they are at risk for passing it. And if you say, oh, I don't have to worry about that, I use condoms, condoms only work 80% of the time. So you multiply an 80% chance that the condoms aren't working, a 1 in 100 chance the individual you're with is a bisexual individual with HIV, 1 in 100 chance they're bisexual, and then a small chance that they have HIV. You multiply those all out, and it comes out to 100 or more fold increase in your chance of getting HIV under those circumstances. So I wrote this book, but then I started thinking about other STDs, and I'm like, wait a minute. There is a champion, a celebrity champion for almost every STD. HIV has Charlie Sheen and Magic Johnson. HPV, there is Erin Andrews, a very well-known female sports announcer who has cervical cancer from HIV. HPV, she goes out and champions that. Michael Douglas has oral cancer from HPV. He goes out and admits that and champions that. And then you have Farrah Fawcett. She had rectal cancer from HPV. That's well known. And you have people for colon cancer. You have people for essentially everything. There's not one celebrity that has ever come out and said, I have genital herpes, I have oral herpes. There's never been a celebrity with the guts to come out. And even I got to be honest with you, I feel weird talking about the dark secret of The Bachelor, which is stigmatizing herpes, because I'm thinking, well, everybody out there is going to assume I have herpes, which I don't. But you know what? It's so sad that somebody without herpes has to champion herpes. And, if people point a finger and think, well, because you're so interested, you must have herpes, so be it. I don't really care. But this is crazy.
That. Yeah, we talked about that.
I feel a little bit, I don't want people to think I have herpes.
Me too.
We got to stop it.
I know.
And we did some videos trying to educate people about this herpes risk, and the models, quote unquote, would sign off of the deal when they heard that it was something about, elucidating the herpes risk, because they didn't want to be associated with it.
I totally get that.
It's crazy.
We were chatting, I think, on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and if I ever say anything you don't want me to put out there to stop me.
Can I go like this, or what am I supposed to do?
And we're gonna get to your questions, These are all fantastic questions, and I totally relate to all of them. So we're gonna get to them. Yeah, like you were telling me, I feel a little weird and uneasy about talking about this because I don't want people thinking I have. And I said the same thing. Well, I feel a little weird because I don't want people thinking I have, and I don't have it.
Why are you guys so interested in it? You must have it.
And so
this is
that's
crazy.
weird so we're like, so that's a problem. The stigma is so huge. Okay, Alba has a fantastic comment. She says that can be a deal breaker for some people, and the show has their criteria for choosing their contestants. Makes sense to me that they're protecting themselves. So let's talk about the criteria, because what you were saying is they're stigmatizing or discriminating against people with that, but really nothing else.
Correct.
Things that could actually be like fatal, right?
They're saying, hey, if you have genital herpes type 2, you can't come on the show. But they're not testing for genital herpes type 1, and they're not testing for a much worse, potentially sexually transmitted disease, HPV. And they're not checking, hey, do you have full vaccination for HPV? And so it just doesn't make logical sense. And here's the other thing I want to emphasize over and over. This is where Bachelor should take a lead in this critical area. They should say, God damn it, herpes is no big deal. Herpes doesn't kill you like HIV, HPV, and syphilis can. It doesn't eat into your brain like syphilis can. It doesn't cause infertility like chlamydia, mycoplasma, and gonorrhea, right? And it doesn't, make you itch, and it doesn't go all over your bed sheets and all over your bathroom like pubic lice. Herpes, when it comes outside the body, dies within a couple seconds. So you never have to worry about sharing toilets, showers, or swimming pools with people with herpes. So wait a minute, why is there all this angst about herpes?
So you're saying that they discriminate against people with that, but they don't test for some of these other things that actually have much more like fatal side effects.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Yeah. What do you guys think about that? Someone said I have HPV 2 and I'm having it once a month for a couple of weeks, and it has ruined my sex life / relationships. Did you mean
HSV?
Did you mean HSV? Tell us a little more about that. Maybe we could. Do you have any advice for someone? Let's say it is HSV that she's talking about.
Well, if she has herpes type 2 and it's coming out frequently, you have frequent attacks, and I want to make it clear that of the people with herpes simplex type 2, only 1 in 10 has attacks, and only 1 in 100 or less, 1 in 1,000 has severe attacks. So this individual sounds like she's somewhere in between attacks and severe attacks. Mm-hmm. You need to look for stressors, infections and stress, lack of sleep, certain surgeries, trauma can trigger more herpes. And then you also should be on Valtrex or a anti-herpes drug. And if you take that every day in a prescribed quantity, that should markedly decrease, if not eliminate, your outbreaks.
That actually eliminates them?
It can. Okay. It doesn't always, but it can.
Okay.
It's very effective. The anti-herpes medicine lowers your chance of spreading it, lowers your chance of seeing it by maybe more than 50%. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, good. She said good to know. Yeah, so thank you for that. You guys have any other questions about that? In our last live stream, there was this floodgate open, like hundreds of questions literally about HPV, certain test results from pap smears and certain things like that. So yeah, he knows all about this stuff.
The other thing our viewers need to know is that the testing for herpes is very tricky, and many doctors aren't, unfortunately, up to snuff, and so they inappropriately test you. And one of the reasons most of the agencies that recommend doctors to do something or not don't even recommend you get a herpes test when you go into your doctor and say, I want a full STD check. You better ask your doctor, because most of them won't do the herpes simplex. And why?
Yeah, why?
Because doctors have been so, I hate to say stupid, but doctors have been so stupid to do inappropriate testing and to not do, you need 2 tests to confirm that you have herpes in most instances. And they failed to do that, and people have been misdiagnosed with herpes. And so a lot of people got a misdiagnosis, and then these agencies just say, hey, let's tell doctors to stop testing. But that's insane, because you need to know whether or not you have herpes to protect your partners, and you need to know to yourself minimize any chance that somebody comes back at you as well. And you can't stop the spread of herpes if you're unaware. And unfortunately, 9 out of 10 people that have herpes today are unaware, and that needs to be changed.
Okay, got it. And I'm just curious off the top of my head, and we'd love to hear more questions from you guys too. I'll scroll up and see if we missed any. How can people protect themselves? Because we talked about last time that the number one symptom of most of these STDs is actually no symptoms. So if you guys have ever had that conversation, if you have a new partner or, and most people say, oh no, I'm fine. I've never had anything. I've never had a symptom, where most people actually have had something and they just don't know about it. I might not be saying this correctly, but
no, you're saying it exactly correctly. It's because you can't rely on symptoms. Most people go, well, because I have no symptoms, I must not have herpes. And that's untrue because I just said 90% of people with herpes have no symptoms. And then you go, well, I've gotten my STD checks. I go to my gynecologist and I get a complete check. Well, that's not helpful because most gynecologists don't run the herpes test. And unfortunately, sometimes even when they do, they run them inappropriately. So having a normal STD complete check doesn't mean you don't have herpes. And then lastly, people think, well, because of the hyperbolic response I get from my friends or my family when I tell them I have herpes, it must be an incredibly horrible disease. And that's also not true, as I just went through. So you said, what can you do to protect yourself? Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't have herpes, the first thing you have to do is test yourself because you may well have herpes, okay? And you have to educate yourself on what the symptoms are, because of the 90% that have no symptoms, if you really educate them that, oh, you can get lesions in the perianal region, you can get them in the buttocks, you can get them high on your butt or in the low spine, and that's how herpes presents. So you have to know the presentations, and a lot of time herpes presents totally out of the region you're looking for, around the penis or around the vulva, and you have to be aware of that. And the second thing, after you test yourself, I would test my partner. Mm-hmm. I mean, because if you're going to have a relationship and you're not using condoms, into a relationship, you need to know to protect yourself and your partner. And then the third thing is, okay, you test yourself, you test your partner, you better test your doctor because a lot of them aren't so up to date. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk about different things, because what you can do is condoms work 50+%. It also happens that taking an anti-herpes drug helps 50+%. And lastly, and we don't fully understand this, but being aware and knowledgeable about herpes and telling your partner, that also lowers the chance of getting herpes by 50%. So you put all those three things together and you get a really high, somewhere up in the, no one knows exactly, 70, 80, 90% prevention. And then there's one last thing that some people do. It probably works, but we don't have really clear evidence. And that's, if I don't have herpes and I'm going out with someone that I don't know what their test results are, or I know they have herpes, you can prophylactically, just like you take PrEP before you go out with people at high risk for HIV, or you take tetracycline before you go out with people at high risk of syphilis or chlamydia, you can take an anti-herpes drug when you don't have herpes to lower the chance that your partner who does have herpes or may have herpes will transmit it to you.
Wow. Okay, somebody
Lots of stuff to do.
I know. I know. He's like, have microphone will talk. You guys talk a lot. Somebody asked, how can we test my partner if he doesn't have symptoms? I believe it's a blood test, isn't it?
It's a blood test, but you have to be very careful because it's a two-part blood test. If the blood test, and it's called a herpes select, is negative, you're home free. But if the herpes select is positive for herpes type 2, you may need, or most likely will need, a second test to validate that.
If the first one is positive.
If the first one is positive, okay, that's awesome. It's often not sufficient and you need a second test. Just like HIV, you need two different tests. You also need the same thing for herpes.
Are they both blood tests, or
they're both blood tests?
Okay.
The one is more, the confirmatory test is more expensive and takes a little longer to get, and that's called a Westergen blot. The first one was a herpes select.
Okay. She said, okay, thank you. Awesome.
The other thing, though, you need to do is people need to know, in terms of herpes, well, what does herpes look like? And you really need to go through some of the pictures in this book as well to try to pick out what are the obvious, we call them ant minis, like you see it and you go, oh, that's herpes. And then what are the tricky, hard to diagnose ones? And then also there's something else that people need to be aware of. A lot of people get subtle scars where they've had herpes, and you need to know those as well. And then you can look at, oh yeah, what you were complaining about probably was herpes, and it's left this tiny little infinitesimal mark. And that's something else that people can easily study and know.
Okay, great to know. And I remember last time we talked about how you spent 2 years writing this book after you appeared on was it the Today Show? Or
yeah, the Today Show with Charlie.
Yeah.
And I was always kind of concerned because all my friends too tell me, Rob, why did you write this book? Why did you, this is all online, right? You can just, totally, if you're worried about herpes, go online, type in herpes, and it'll all be there. Well, I went to Harvard, and I think I made it through there, and I couldn't find it online. I really have to be honest. And so this is a labor of love to try to collate everything into one reference book where you've got facts. You don't have to go through and say, oh, is this site credible or not? And a lot of the sites, let's just take herpes. If you're worried about herpes and someone just asked, hey, how do I test my partner for herpes? But you have to know how long after the exposure to test too. It's not just what the right test is. If you had intercourse with individual X, do you wait a day, a week, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks? And that's very important, because if you wait 3 days, that's not helpful for any STD. And it turns out herpes, you probably have to wait 3 to 4 weeks after an exposure to know that that exposure didn't give you herpes.
Okay, 3 to 4 weeks.
Correct.
For it to I don't know how to.
But that's true for all the different STDs, and you can't find that stuff online.
It's not online. No. That's why.
I wish it were. I wish it were.
Okay, that's why the description for his book is in the. The link for his book on Amazon is in the description right now. If you guys want to go check it out. Someone asked, may it affect my pregnancy or childbirth if they have herpes?
Well, I just spent a long time saying herpes is no big deal, which is totally my position. And I'm going to say it again, herpes is no big deal. So the fear factor is, what if I pass this to my unborn baby? And we know that that does happen, but fortunately it's incredibly rare. So we have a little bit less than 4 million births, live births in America each year. Out of that 4 million, there's something like 400 or 500 cases of herpes-associated neonatal disease. And about half of these are incredibly severe and half are less. So basically, you have something like 1 in 10,000 babies has a problem with acquiring herpes when it's coming down the birthing tract. And if you talk about severe disease, that's 1 in 20,000. So here's the real trick. Mm-hmm. Is it worth testing 20,000 couples to save that one baby? I say yes, but different people have different assessments. I'll tell you, my patients, I would want it tested. So I recommend that pregnant women do get a check. And it turns out the women most at risk are women that don't have herpes, that acquire it late in the pregnancy.
Right.
So if you don't have herpes, you go, okay, fine, I can't pass it to my baby. No, you have to check your partner, because with intercourse in the 3rd trimester, if you get herpes the first time, that's the highest risk. And the other interesting thing is it's equal in terms of herpes type 1 or herpes type 2. So this whole BS thing about good herpes, bad herpes is BS. You can get it from oral cold sores passed to the baby statistically just as readily as from the bad herpes, genital herpes type 2. So people have to stop with this herpes 1 and 2, good, bad, and they just have to realize something like 50% of individuals, 20 to 40, have one of the types of herpes. You know, over 160 million Americans have herpes. Again, forget 1 or 2. And they're not a big deal. I just said 1 in 20,000 births, we have a problem. And I think we can prevent that problem, because if we know the women at risk, we just give them the antiviral for herpes the last trimester. It's totally preventable. It's not a big deal.
Okay. So if they get it while they're pregnant, and it doesn't matter which kind, that's when it can affect the baby. Do I have that right?
That's the highest risk. Correct.
Okay, got it.
So if a woman doesn't have herpes, that they're not off scot-free. They're at the highest risk.
They're the ones
should their partner have it, and then that happens to unfortunately be the time they acquire it.
So the partner needs to get checked too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Did that answer your question? Let us know. Do you guys have any other questions? I have outbreaks at least once a month, sometimes twice. It is a big deal for me. Anything you could have to say?
You're the 1%, unfortunately, that the herpes is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And you have to go on special high-dose antiviral drugs to try to get this virus home free. And you have to look for other reasons why your immune system might not be up to snuff. Because, you know, we always say, one of the things I said, herpes disease is no big deal, right? The funny thing is, it's really mostly not even a disease. A disease is something that bothers you, like this last caller. Okay. It bothers her. That's a disease. But most of the time, it's just a silent infection. It doesn't cause any symptoms, and it doesn't do anything bad in the future. Now, this individual has the disease, and the disease can be treated very effectively with the right drugs.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Hopefully I read it right. She said I have outbursts at least once a month, sometimes twice. I think she meant like outbreaks. Is that
outbreaks,
the same thing?
Right.
Okay.
So we need to look at triggers. We need to look at her immune system, and we need to get her on the right antivirals.
Okay. And could she just go to her doctor to do something like that?
She can go to her doctor if they're knowledgeable, but I wrote this book for another reason. Doctors don't know this stuff.
Okay.
I mean, I'm appalled by the number of patients I get from dermatologists and gynecologists that don't have any idea about these things. And that's why I'd like to go public, because you've got to advocate this yourself. You can't just go to your doctor anymore, because many of them, unfortunately, are out of step with the most recent science in this area.
Okay. She says, thank you. Yes, I'll take regular antivirals. And they are, is there a name for them? Or?
Well, there's acyclovir, there's Valtrex, there's Famvir.
Okay.
There's a number of different ones, but you do need some help. They're prescription drugs.
Okay.
Is
there one that you recommend more than the other? Does it depend on the person?
No, it depends on the person. I mean, Valtrex is the standard, but if a person doesn't have the right insurance, sometimes we go to the generic acyclovir because there may be a cost issue involved, and we just have to adjust the dose based on her symptoms. And we have to look at her immune system as well. Okay,
and that will help.
That will get at this problem. There are very few people that, after proper approach, have continued attacks every month. That's really a giant nuisance. It's not a life-threatening disease. It's a giant quality of life issue, and it can be helped.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? We're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes today. Last time we went on for like an hour and a half because everyone had so many questions.
I gotta get places.
I know. We got to go. So we have about 4 minutes. If anyone has any other questions or anything like that, we're going to bring you back on, hopefully, to talk about weight loss. He's also the world leading weight loss expert. I always have, is it the world, the country?
At least in this city. No. We've done a lot. A lot of people talk about weight loss, and very few people have the number, hundreds and hundreds of human patients. And we've got a lot of follow-up at 6 years. So I think that's the important thing. It's relatively difficult to lose weight, but it's much more difficult to maintain weight. So I regard that's my specialty, maintaining weight loss, which I think is a far better approach than getting weight loss, because why try to get weight loss if you don't have a system to maintain it?
Okay, yeah. So I'm confused after the last live stream that we got a ton of questions about weight loss. So maybe next time we'll bring you on talk. But he also wrote a book about that. So someone said I'm on a lifelong weight loss journey. So that topic is of interest to me. Yeah, Alvo, we got so many questions just like that. He also wrote another book. It's over there. I should have brought it over here. We can post a link to that, or we'll just bring you back on.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah. Great. You're going to want to hear everything he has to say on that. So we're actually right on time today.
Wow, this is new for you.
I know, new for me, really. So thank you guys so much. We hope this was helpful. Was this helpful for you guys? It sounded like you answered a lot of really great questions about this one specifically. So have a great.
Can I just say one thing?
Absolutely, yeah.
I want people to somehow register some protest against the Bachelor. I mean, I don't think whether you have herpes or whether you don't, I think this is incredibly unfair. And I think that they're stigmatizing when they should be leading in terms of recognizing that herpes is not a big deal. This is not something, if you don't have herpes, that you should be panicked about getting. And if you do have herpes, this should not be something that you're just so ashamed of that you, like 80% of other people with herpes, don't tell your partners and keep silent. So register some protest, join me somehow to register your anger and your displeasure that this national TV show is not using their platform in a helpful, constructive fashion.
Okay. Amazing. We're right on time. Awesome. You're welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of the weekend. And we will do this again soon, hopefully, maybe next month or something like that.
I'll be back.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.